Okay, here we are. I have sent out the invitation to Indhira, Udofia, and I think we're ready to go. Hello?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes. I'm sorry. When I started the new one, it just like cut me the hell off of the other one. I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess we're done there."
And we're finished. Cool.
Yeah. Oh my God. So
Yeah.
where are you? Where have you come from? Where do you go? Where do you come from?
So,
Cotton Eye Joe.
so I just got off the road from Atlanta where I did a meet the friends trip with one of my paramours.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Sounds
which was
exciting.
nerve-wracking and all the things. I was like, please don't hate this one. I like
Yeah.
this one.
Okay.
Um,
So they're your
yeah.
friends they were meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what's
Yeah.
the verdict?
So far, everyone, she met my brother and my best friend slash ex, and they love her. And when they left, she was like, they're like, well, we are more than welcome to come back anytime. So that was cool. So
Whoa.
it's like, yeah, this won't be the first or the last time we hang out. So I was like, oh,
So have you started planning the wedding or?
I am not one of those U-haulers.
Yeah. Well, you never know.
So yeah, because it's almost been 5 months, so I've already been like, well, if I were to get married, like, I would like or a church, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
The church is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think we're really good. We still have that weird like we like each other, but it's the summertime
Yeah,
feel, and
I get it.
that's been a weird, yeah.
But
So
also very healthy. Way to grow up and be a late 20s-year-old and just be like,
you
it's
know,
summer. We'll deal with it in our own time and in our own way.
yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. So, how's teaching life treating you?
I just want it to be done soon. Can we quit it? Can we quit it? Can we hit it and then quit it? I'm done. Oh,
Well,
it's almost
it's then
summertime.
you get to see, yeah,
Yeah.
and then you see the children, and you're like, it's all worth it. They
Yes,
learned about the.
it's all worth it, I hope. I hope I'm not just wasting my whole life. Well, shall we get started with our podcast here?
Sounds wonderful. The piece I read was delightful, and so
I
I'm kind
know.
of glad about this.
I'm so surprised because I have only up to this point, against all odds, read his science fiction, or his fantasy. So to read part of his science fiction, I was like, okay. Which, I mean, I guess this is science fiction. We could talk about that, but um,
Yeah,
in my heart, I kind of want to do like a podcast introduction. So I'm gonna do it. Are you ready for it? Hi, I'm
I'm
here.
ready.
Yeah, I'm here with my guest, Indhira Udofia, and we're here talking about Samuel Delany's short story, Drift Glass. Indhira, on this podcast that I just created right now, we introduce ourselves because we listened to a lot of Cameron Esposito, who said that first. So would you introduce yourselves to everyone in whatever way that you choose?
Okay, well, my name is Indira Udofia, MDiv, MSW,
Yes.
STM, a lot of degrees,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is just a fancy way of saying I'm going to be in debt forever.
Yes.
I am really interested in trauma and spirituality and queerness and blackness and how all these nesses that encounter are speak to sites of healing and growth. So I went to divinity school with the beloved Mr. Badley, and as a Pentecostal Baptist with a queer identity, meeting the lovely Badley as a Catholic was amazing because I needed in a world full of Methodists.
Yeah,
but
we both did.
Me and Mr. Badley bonded over words and stories, and how stories and narratives speak more to the otherworldliness of like imagine life together. And so that is how I feel like I got introduced to literature, to the point where now I'm thinking like I may just go back to school for English and call it a day.
Literally, right? Me too. We should go to the same program.
Yeah, well, actually, we'll talk about that offline.
Good.
But yeah, so that's a little bit about who I am. I'm Black. I identify as a woman. My pronouns are she, hers, and hers. I think it's important to know what that means, and how you define yourself, and how you enter into space. I work with veterans. I help with housing, but I just love to read, and books were my first friends, and they'll be my friends until I close my eyes.
Yeah, the coolest thing about becoming a mature reader is realizing how much of the world is to be read. And it doesn't just have to be books. It can be people and situations and conversations and body language and things. So you used a couple of words that I just would love for you to unpack.
Sure.
So I'm going to play dumb for a second. Hey, you used this word queer. Now, I thought that was a mean word. Why didn't you say LGBTQ?
Well, Q can stand for queer or questioning. I identify as queer, which means that I identify as not straight, or not heterosexual. I don't necessarily use the identifying terms of bisexual or lesbian, because I feel like queer encapsulates the full continuum of what it means to identify as not straight. I feel like expression of sexuality is on, but also more importantly, I identify as queer because I have a political orientation towards representing those who are marginalized. So my identity is tied to those who sit on the margins of the margins of the margins. So my political commitments extend beyond just gay marriage, for instance. I am a strong and abiding ally for trans women of color. And so my politics and the way that I orient my life extends beyond what I do in the bedroom, which is why I use the word queer.
Nobody can see me doing this on this podcast right now unless you're watching this on YouTube, perchance, but I was dancing all through that. So thank you so much. That was wonderful. That's great, because I think even within the queer community, there's a lot of discord and misunderstanding about what queer means and what it can mean. And I'm really glad to hear you do such a beautiful job of explaining why it's important to you. So let's get into this story. Sam Delany, have you ever even heard of this man?
No, which is kind of sad because it's beautiful. Like, his writing is beautiful. And I was like, have I not heard of this guy before? But also did introduce me to Octavia Butler. So, like, I mean, I figured this was going to be one of those experiences.
It's my fate. It's my fate in life. One of my other students is doing his project on Octavia Butler, and I have to say, I'm having a real hard time not being like, so how's it going? Like every 5 minutes, tell me more. Do you want to nerd out about it? What do you feel? What does your heart tell you?
I did.
Oh my gosh. So Octavia Butler is my goddess, and I think that maybe that Samuel Delany might be my god. Drift Glass is the name of the story that we read, And I would love to start out our conversation with the beginning of the story. So could I read the first little paragraph, and maybe we could start out with what's just struck us about the story, and maybe what do we think that it's about, and we can kind of talk through that.
Yes. Yes.
All right, here's how the story begins. It's split into parts, and this is a little bit of part one. Sometimes I go down to the port, splashing sand with my stiff foot at the end of my stiff leg locked in my stiff hip, with the useless arm a-swinging to get wet all over again. Drink in the dives with cronies ashore, feeling old, broken, sorry for myself, laughing louder and louder. The third of my face that was burned away in the accident was patched with skin grafts from my chest so that what's left of my mouth distorts all loud sounds. Sloppy sartorial reconstruction. Also, I have a hairy chest. Chest hair does not look like beard hair, and it grows all up under my right eye. And my beard is red, my chest hair brown, while the thatch curling down over my neck and ears is sun-streaked to white here, darkened to bronze there, midst general blondness. My reason of my being of walking, I suppose my gait could be called headlong limping, horror show, plus a general inclination to sulk. I spent most of the time up in the wood and glass and aluminum house on the surf-sloughed point that the aquatic core ceded me along with my pension. Rugs from Turkey there, copper pots, my tenor recorder, which I can no longer play, and my books. But sometimes when the gold fog blurs the morning, I go down to the beach and tromp barefoot in the wet, edging to the sea, searching for drift glass. Woo! What a beginning.
I mean, can we just talk about like how like beautiful he talks about his disfigurement? Like,
yeah,
you would see someone who, like, spoiler alert, is in a like terrible accident and is thinking about his like how it has transformed his being, and yet there is a beauty into which he explains plainly his being and his walking and interaction in this world. But you're also kind of like, but that's kind of beautiful to laugh. There's like these moments where he's like, I laugh. And, you know, even though when this loud sloppy says, he still laughs and flicks water into himself to make himself feel alive. There's something like oddly beautifully sad about it. And I just was like, oh, and it just, the beautiful sadness just kept going through the whole piece to me.
Yeah. So I'm really conflicted about it myself, because I think it's very wow, isn't it interesting that this story starts out with a point by point explanation, but also pretty pointedly, I think, free of valued language, right? He's not disparaging himself, but he's also not going out of his way to say that he thinks it's awesome. It's pretty neutral. He just gets it all out there. All the accident comes out there, and so does the drift glass. And then over the course of the story, though, I can't quite get the sense of if he's in denial about what happened, so he's just like, oh, I don't think about it, it's fine, or if he's really integrated his trauma. I'm conflicted. I don't know.
Like it's an integrated sense of. So I think so one thing that we talk a lot about in like trauma studies or trauma like and like things about people who experience deep trauma, people are more hung up about what has happened than you are once you've reached a certain level of acceptance or resilience.
Yeah.
And so I think for everyone else, his body is a reminder of this like horrible thing that has happened, right? And at some point, you can either harbor everyone else's like, feelings of survivor's remorse or whatever you want to call it, or you can say this is what it is. Like, I think it's an acceptance because he's not, like you said, it's matter of fact. There's no value judgments. There's no pity attached to it. It's just, this is what I look like. This is what my body does. This is what my body is and how it inhabits a space. And because of that, there's no sense of with me, or like, I have no denial that my mouth makes funny sounds because the burns in my mouth have twisted my mouth up in this way. And my walking is impaired, but it doesn't make me any less alive or present in the moment.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think it's a denial. I think it's acceptance. And I think a lot of people who have some sort of different ability, whether it's, like actual physical illness or, some type of mental disability, has this sort of thing. I know with me, I suffer from depression and anxiety, and I've gotten to a place where I can name how I move through the world and how I understand my seasons of like heightened anxiety or heightened depression. It's sort of like a woe is me, like, oh God, it sucks to be depressed. Although, depression is no walk in the park, but there is a certain way that it encapsulates how I pay attention to details, how I know things, how I read faces. And even though sometimes it's utterly exhausting to do those things, it's just a part of my everyday life where now I can say like, yes, I'm someone who has to I'm constantly processing and constantly reading. And so even when I walk through the world and I'm supposed to be trying to like just breathing and being, I have to like intentionally stop myself from constantly reading the room and constantly reading feelings and emotions and where I go. And so I kind of read it in the same way as like someone who walks with some type of different ability or some type of illness or physical or mental disorder. Is like, after a while, it's so a part of who you are that it's just kind of like, let me just name this disclaimer so that you can see how I see myself first before you see how the entire community sees me.
Yeah. So that's really interesting because, as you well know, I've been like really struggling through my cocktail of ADHD and anxiety and depression as well. And, I don't think before you said that and before I read this story, I really could have named necessarily how strange it is interacting with people about it, because I've come to a point of self-knowledge with it where I can, it's almost like narrating my way through it. Like I feel that I am going into depression right now, and I want to just let you know that, and it's going to be a rough time, and I may disappear, and I may not get things done, and I may need help. And people are just like, that people are weird about it. And I can't even explain it because in the moment that I'm in it, I'm sort of like not quite present, but it's weird understanding it and talking your way through it and then trying to understand also how other people are reacting. Because I don't think people are used to people being able to name and claim, to use a Pentecostal phrase that we're both aware of, to name and claim how we go through the world.
And I think that's what makes this piece so striking, is that I think you're constantly confronted with how the main character sees himself and how everyone else encounters the way he moves through the world. And how that is
different. Those are disjuncted all the time. Yeah.
And thinking about just having intersects, thinking about being either having some sort of disability or different ability, thinking about queerness, thinking about gender identity, thinking about race. I think we all have these moments where we really have curated what could be perceived as some semblance of a handicap so to speak, and we are peace and we've gained some acceptance, and how we view an incident that may have, brought apart a huge different, what's the word I want to use? Something that could have made others die from.
Yes.
And we survive it, and we're like navigating in the aftermath.
Mm-hmm.
It often so weird to be a survivor of things that most people would perish from.
So let me get this straight. Everything that you've said has led me to 3 different questions that I want to ask you. Number 0, because I accidentally started with 1 and I want to go back to 0. Number 0, are you telling me that this story could be queer without a gay couple, and that it could be Black without acknowledging the skin color of its characters?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, what do you mean by that?
I think you can literally look at this dance is killing me. Look at the story and see how difference can be perceived by those outside of the norm, right? Those within the norm, or people who are part of a subclass, how they interact and move. His description of, and let me see if I can find it, because I love a good descriptor.
Oh, please do. Ugh, I'm getting the shivers.
I know. At first was like, okay. I'm not gonna lie. I don't normally do sci-fi because I'm like, oh god, sometimes it can be very contrived. But
I'll tell you what.
When she about, so it's on page 104 of the printout, and it is, what's her name? Cal, and what's the girl's name? God, now I gotta go back because
Is she named? She may not. Oh, Ariel.
Okay,
not
that's right. Because I was like, oh,
am I right?
Yeah, I was like Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
So when Ariel goes and is encountering Cal, living his life trying to get drift glass, right? Mm-hmm. First of all, like, don't interrupt my time. It's my me time. But when Ariel goes and she is talking to him about and she's looking at his wounds and looking at his stuff. There's this point where she says, she reaches for my neck, pulls my collar back from my shoulder, and touches the tender slits of my gills, outlining them with cool figures. Who are you? So I was like, first of all, I was like, what? Why would you touch someone without knowing who they are? Mm. And then I just noticed the way that she did the different classes of people, the ones who have different types of gills, or the seam. I guess are they called seamen? Did we ever get like a name for them?
No, they're called amphimen, but it would be too cool if they were called seamen, wouldn't it?
I was like, before they were introduced, I definitely was like, oh, this is a seaman. So subclass of people who are put in harm's way in order to benefit the full colonies of people, right? Yes. I thought a lot about the Black coal miners in West Virginia, right? Like these like Black men to go and like put themselves at harm's way. Half of them have iron lungs and all these lung issues and stuff. And when the industry finally dies, there's nothing left to really hold them. And so I think about like this idea of a certain class of people being viewed as discarded to do the work that other people want to do. Like that is a very key part of today's reality. If we think about Latinx folks and immigrant workers and migrant workers, and we think about, just the immigrant crisis of what is that country, Sudan, where they were like literally having modern day slavery all over again, where they were selling bodies continent and selling them for indentured servitude. Like there are so many ways that you can see this and read race or read queerness or read ability into this without naming it as the anthem or Black people, or the anthem or Latinx folks, or, you know, or, you know, queer. I also, so there was a weird moment when I was reading this, and I was reading Cal's narration, and I thought, oh, here reminds me of me, how I'm constantly always reading the rooms and thinking of who is safe to be fully myself and who's not safe to be fully myself. This idea of being guarded and noticing the details and noticing who's touching me and how they're touching me. Yes. And I thought that's pretty much such an identity thing that I feel like most of the people in my particular community, the LGBT, my particular tribe of the LGBT, where as a queer person, I'm constantly reading who's showing up, how they're showing up, and is it safe for me to fully be myself in showing up?
Yes. Well, I actually have a question about that exact thing, because one of the interesting things about the narration of this story is that it gets interrupted with these parenthetical phrases. Like on 103, it says, stops and says, details like that. Yes, they are the most important things, the points from which we suspend later pain, which, apart from being just a beautiful sentence, is also like, that's like classic trauma interaction with the world, but also exactly what you're talking about at the same time. And then on 117, again, breaks in with these parentheticals, details, yes, those are the things you remember. How does that inform what you're talking about right now with like reading the room and queerness and Blackness?
Well, I think as someone who has constantly been in flux with how myself is welcomed in certain spaces. I mean, I'm a Black queer Baptist woman, which has a lot of different types of pressures that come along with it. When I enter into a space, I'm constantly figuring out if this is the place where I can tell my whole truth, what is the party line, how people perceive my dress. I am fortunate enough to be femme, so I can pass in certain areas. And then in other areas, when it's time for me to be more casual and I want to wear my basketball shorts and my sneakers and my hair pulled back in a pony, and I look a little harder because I'm also a fat Black woman, which I have to name as another way that my body can be taken up or perceived. I'm constantly looking at ways in which myself gets examined and read, and my story gets read and mapped on me, which is so much this story is about how story gets read and mapped onto the people he interacts. So when they're talking to, is his name João?
Yeah, João. I think it's the Brazilian version of Juan. João.
Yes. So João, when he's talking to him, and it literally, Cal becomes a projection of his children, and that story, his story gets mapped, and his fears get mapped onto his body and his experience, and that's how it's read and filtered. So he has to constantly step outside of his narrative to be reassuring that João is allowing his children to fully flourish. Or when he's talking to Torque and Torque's insecurities about going in and doing the same exact task that landed Cal into where he was, and talking to Ariel's fears about what Torque is going to do, or, you know, Ariel's curiosity about what that world looks like underneath the water, given how she's tied to this industry. I mean, so many people read his body and take their insecurities onto his body. Like, it must be so hard to navigate it. And he's just picking up drift glass, made a life of himself, made peace with what he's doing, and just kind of like, you know, yeah, I do things differently, but it doesn't mean that it's any less or more beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still an uncle who gets to laugh nieces and nephews, and I get good friends. Even though I may have more difficulty, I still go to fish and be a part of the community affairs, and I can still impart wisdom. And at the end of the day, whether a bad thing happens or not, I'm still here and I'm still present.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
With that in mind, can we talk about the end of the story? I thought that this is all of this, and the story itself leads us to that little part 5, which is, under a certain way of thinking about it, is a little short and maybe a little anticlimactic. And you sort of, spoiler alert, find out that Torque has gone through something very similar to what Cal had, except for that he died. And we see Ariel and we see Cal in the aftermath of that. But there are no great declarations. There are no great speeches giving some grand meaning to it. What's the significance to the end of this story? I think we've really explored the richness and the depth of it in such a way that I think people will understand that it's definitely worth a read. But what are we to take away from this ending?
I thought there was a big declaration. When we go through traumas and when we go through traumatic moments, often in the aftermath, I think a lot of people think that the more declarative, like the moaning and growing and the nailing and mashing of teeth, the person who throws themselves on the casket is the big defining moment of what it means to go through a trauma. But there's this line he says towards the end, when he's asking Ariel about her feelings towards Torque.
Mm-hmm.
A clumsy cripple, I trip all over everyone's emotions. In the mirror, I'm too busy looking at what may have been. I'm sorry, Ariel. To me, that's like this idea of reading the things like, as even though he has made peace about what has happened to him, that this thing will happen again, right? Like there's no doubt in his mind that this is a bad idea. To redo this thing would be a terrible idea for everyone involved, and everyone seems like, and I think there's a certain of acceptance that it wasn't his fault for what happened to him. It's just the nature of what that task was supposed to be. And I don't know if that is supposed to be like the thing you take away, that there are times in which the things that happen to us are way beyond our controls. We can try to plan for it. We can try to learn what happens. We can try to create roadmaps or problem solves, but some things are what they are. And maybe we should just leave that undertow alone. Like maybe the cable's not there. And that is the defining moment, that no matter how far we think we are advanced, nature is nature. And things will be what things will be.
Yeah.
The takeaway of that entire conversation at the end is just like, at the end of the day, when you're sitting in the aftermath, that humanity is not the fail-safe. Nature is. And nature's going to do what nature, and it's our job to either respect nature enough to know that there's just certain things we can and cannot do, or we'll constantly be out of our own catastrophic delusions of grandeur.
Yeah, and what was really interesting to me, and I hope you can tell by my question that I was baiting you a little bit and that I didn't quite agree with what I was saying, but I thought that in this moment in part 5, Cal solidified himself as a hero. Because Cal, and this is what I should have seen when I was confused about how to interpret his own reactions to his trauma, is that he knows that it's enough to say I'm sorry, and to say I'm sorry again. and that in order to be our hero, he doesn't need to take on, because it's not just nature that they're taking on, they're also taking on, whether it's a governmental organization or this institution, the Aqua Corps or whatever. He can be our hero without needing to go and take on the corporation in the same way that he can be our hero without needing to go and take on the Slash. He is a hero because he's integrated his trauma, and he is beginning to form a sort of queer and a sort of Black community with Ariel, understanding in a way that almost no one else can what she's going through.
Mm-hmm. And what's also just really beautiful about the last section the last section really is just, it's the everydayness of togetherness, right? That is
Yes.
the healing property. There is something healing about joining together in the midst of tragedy and still encountering the everyday.
Yes.
In a way in which, when death or destruction or disaster hits, it's the everyday moments that you cherish the most. It's the fact that you could still wake up and have a cup of coffee with someone, right? When your whole world you crave the everydayness. And in part 5, Cal allows Ariel to have some semblance of an everyday, in a day that she probably never thought she would have. Mm-hmm. I mean, apparently her lover is dead, but she's like, come in and have an avocado. And she's like, well, is that and let's read it. Do you just need some oil and vinegar, or should you have some tea? And being able to provide her, not with the, oh my God, I can't imagine how you must feel. Oh my God, it's so terrible. Like, are you like gonna die? Like, isn't this the worst? And just being like, can I just be here with you and give you just some semblance of normalcy, and something that should not be normal, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful gift, and people don't relish in the ordinary enough.
Right, and it's so many. You've read so many short stories, and I've read so many short stories. How many short stories have we read that? And generally I enjoy it, but they just have to end on like a pithy little, like, somebody's got to say something, or the narration's just got to be bam, and end and scene. But this one, the very last sentence is Cal just saying, "Come on inside." That's all. That's all. Yeah. Isn't that wonderful in a way?
Yeah, and it's also because they're looking at the evidence of destruction, right? Like, he's asking, are those clouds that are just up in the sky by themselves, is that the sign of the destruction that has just happened? He's like, yeah, I think so. But just come inside. We don't have to relish in that right now. Just be. And that's beautiful in itself. That to me makes more than just saying, and with the clouds over the ocean, symbolizing the shroud, the funeral shroud of those gone before us. Like,
oh yeah, you have read some short stories, haven't you?
No, I mean, and there's nothing, like you said, there's nothing wrong with them. They're great for a good moment, a nice little like, yes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes in a world where life has become increasingly more and more chaotic, when we think about the news, when we think about politics, when we think about just violence being a part of our everyday reality, I think more and more people crave the everyday, right? There's something that doesn't always have to mean the big thing, but just being and existing.
And you know what? I want you to affirm if this is true or not, but I read a lot of African American literature before I taught this class, but this has like doubled, tripled what I know about it from teaching this class. I think African American literature as a tradition is just, I don't even know the word for it. It's like exceptional, flawless, perfect. at the everyday. I think
Yes.
that I think that I think that almost any author that I can think of has their own angle on it and their own sharpness to it, and and it's serious business, the everyday, but that they all do it, and they do it with such duty and love and caring. What do you have any thoughts about that? Do you agree with me?
I feel like African American authors are the ultimate ethnographers.
Yes, God, say it again. Say it again.
Really are. African American authors are the ultimate ethnographers. I think of Zora Neale Hurston ethnography / literature.
Yeah, literally.
Just spoiler alert. That's literally what I want to go to school to do and study. So newsflash, anybody who's listening, that's what I want to do. Is I feel like I have spent a lifetime trying to search for certain answers when it comes to trauma. And I realized that all the answers are pretty much in stories, right? Like the things that cannot be said through sociology or theology or social work, the things that cannot be said because they are deemed improper to name a thing. Literature has a way of reaching those things and holding the institution, what institutions hold as sacred, and stripping away the pretense and showing this. And that's what makes the ordinary such a prophetic gift for African Americans. At the end of the day, we try so hard to be things that we're not meant to be, right? Like African Americans are projects that were not supposed to be a thing. Like if we look at history and if we look at institutions and stories, like the idea that me as a Black queer woman can have, I am literally a glitch in the matrix. Like I am not supposed to be like here, doing the things that I do, having the thoughts that I have, being able to have the things that I have. That's a gift. And in that, when I step outside of the academy and when I step outside of it, it's the everyday things that actually influence everything that I learn. It's not the fact that I know who Kuiper is that makes me important, right? Like, it's the fact that I have a Sunday prayer meeting memory that I can go back to. My grandma teaching Sunday school to me was the thing that formed me and taught me. The everydayness of giving the announcements after we did Sunday school, that becomes this declarative act of how I think about preaching or how I interact with my clients or how I teach kids to advocate for themselves in and outside the classroom, right? Like, but it wasn't that I was taught like motivational interviewing is the way that you get people to arrive at what you do. It was, Indhira, you've been taking notes on the Sunday school lesson. You're going to give the announcements on what we learned in Sunday school and tally up the votes. That's why I can add and do math, and I can on the fly represent myself and do a training and facilitate a conversation because I've been taught in the everyday actions of just going to Sunday school, just having youth group. And I think that is what makes the ending so beautiful, because it is this noticing, but not being consumed by the things that are meant to destroy, is what makes Cal's story the most powerful story of this whole arc, right?
Yeah.
It's the fact that notice that destruction, there's the evidence of a destruction that almost took my life, that has taken lives. But it cannot consume me and it cannot consume this community, because at the end of the day, we still have to be and function.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes Sam Delany so good, is that I can think of 10 easier, more whatever endings to this, and none of them were that. And that is absolutely clear to me that that is the way this was supposed to end. So let me ask you 2 follow-up questions for the end of the podcast, and then I've got one like PS question for a couple of my students that I want to ask you. So, would you recommend that other people read Samuel Delany?
Absolutely.
If so, why would you recommend that they wrote? What do you think should motivate people to go find Samuel Delany's writings?
I feel like Samuel Delany, first of all, is beautiful in which that the details matter in such a way that you get wrapped up in the details, and then at the end of the day, you walk away with a lesson that you didn't know you needed.
Yes.
There was a lot of book out of his details and the way that he noticed the beauty and the horror in people, right? Like, it's a horrible, ghastly thing to think about someone's mouth being twisted up and, being able to fully breathe. That fishing scene was scary.
Yeah, seriously.
Is he gonna die via fish?
Yeah, seriously. I'll tell you what, I thought he was gonna go ahead and get ended right there.
Right. But just the beauty in being able to see how he reads bodies and bigger stories is amazing. And so for that, you should read it.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for being here. And I'm definitely gonna follow up with you about which English program that we're gonna go to. But do you have any last words?
Just keep reading, because words are your friends, and the more that you read, the more that you see, and the more that you see, the more that you can know. So that's it.
Wonderful. Okay. We'll pretend to end it there, but I have one last question for you, because let me tell you, I have got a little gaggle of queers that come to my room every so often, and they are trying to learn their way through how to be queer in Catholic spaces, and just how to be queer intellectuals, and how to use the word queer. So what do you have any advice, what should they read, what should they watch, who should they follow? What do you think? What's your advice to these baby queers?
Yes. One thing I will say to any BB queer out there, don't be afraid of your own story. Your story has meaning and power. Don't be afraid of your journeys and your questionings and your wrestlings, because that's what makes you beautiful and strong and great. Give yourself permission and to fail as a queer. Judith Campbellson wrote this book called The Queer Art of Failure, which I swear by. It's a little dense, but one thing they talk about is this idea of play, and the idea that adult queers don't play. They don't have imaginations. They want to succeed so bad and meet some type of trajectory or timeline. They want to be the perfect queer person, and there's no such thing. Part of the beauty of being queer is that there's no archetype. You can be and do however you need to do. So if your queer journey leads you to be celibate in order to feel faithful to your faith, have at it. If you want to be like me and live your best, queer thoughtin' and bopping life, that's beautiful. To be be a hoe in your holiness is great too.
Yep.
Multiple ways of understanding what it means to be queer and faithful, and give yourself permission to play and figure out which one fits you and your story. I think Twitter is the best thing for queers of faith out there.
Hallelujah.
Candy Cornball, Candace Simpson, what is Hannah Boning, Antonia Terrazas, Holy Blackout.
Holy Blackout, that's where it's at.
You can follow me on Twitter. I'm kind of full of hot because I go from tweeting about serious stuff to this is what my girlfriend said today. Miss Bond to you. Listen to queer people of color, because we've been in it and we're here for you, just all the time. Black queer women save my life every day. every hour of every day. And I will be internally, everything I am is because a Black queer woman loved me into being. It means something to me. And if you have any things, my Twitter name is IMA Udofia88. You can DM me. Bads has my email. If you have any questions, I will be happy to do any of those things, because I wholeheartedly believe that as a Black queer woman, as many times as a Black woman saved my life, I have the obligation to save others as well.
Well, listen, you are a savior and a goddess, and I am so thankful that you agreed to do this for me and ultimately for my students, because they're going to really benefit from hearing from you, especially a couple of little baby queers that I'm thinking of. So,
yes, and I hope that I made enough sense in my analysis.
Oh, literally, you so did. If anything, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna download the audio and I'm gonna cut it together, and I'm gonna put, like, for instance, so that we didn't have to sit and like summarize the story, I'm gonna just put in a summary, and I'll probably re-record the little piece that I read and some other things so that it makes a little bit more sense. And then we can spend our time. I may even do, like, do you ever listen to On Being, where sometimes she stops and she's like, she'll like define a term or something? Basically, I'm trying to be Krista Tippett, I guess is what I'm telling you. So in my pursuit of being Krista Tippett, I'm going to try that out and see how it goes. I hope she's...
I'm so glad you thought it.
Oh my God. I know that we have not been able to talk very much, but I think about you literally all the time. You and Antonio were like my lifelines, really, truly, at Duke, and I am not worthy. I am not worthy.
Phoebe, I love you so much.
Can we just say... Wait, say it.
You know, Terasa is coming back to North Carolina in like a couple of weeks.
Motherfucker. Okay, I'm going to be there. When time? What day?
Well, she said she's coming for around her birthday. You need to reach out to her and let me know, because I need to figure out, make sure I'm still in town.
We text all the time, and she never tells me when she's going to be in North Carolina. Bitch.
Has she told you about why she's coming to North Carolina?
Oh, is that why? Oh, no. Oh, no. I think I know already from the way you said it. What is it? Just tell me. I can take it.
It's a bay. It's a little bay thing.
It's not the old bay, though, right?
It's not old X-Bay. No.
Oh, Old Bay. Oh my God. If she did Old Bay, I was gonna lose my mind and just be like, I'll stay here. I can't take it. It's too much trauma. Okay. Well, I love that. Well, maybe if we we can like get the play-by-play from her afterwards if we get together down there.
I literally just want to make you cocktails with smoked tequila and live our best.
I can't wait. Oh, I'm so excited. My whole body's like seizing up right now because I just can't wait for it.
I have turned into quite the bartender.
Oh my God. That's my dream, is to have you make drinks for me, because turns out I'm just not too good at it. I tried it a lot of times and I'm real bad. So I just can't wait to have great drinks with you.
So I don't know if you know that I live with Casey for the time being. And trauma. That's trauma. Yeah. They've been my little guinea pigs since I moved in. And like, I feel like mixing tonight. What do you want to do? And now they have a grape garden. So I've been making herbaceous cocktails.
Oh my God.
I made a blackberry and basil cocktail the other day.
Ooh. Oh man, I'm getting hot and bothered.
It was it was great. It was all the good things.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is there just any way you could just like move to Baltimore, or just like
if if this thing with who I'm with now works itself out and we still like each other, she is thinking that DC may be one of her moves. And I would be open to that.
Yeah.
So it just depends on if you're still in Baltimore by the time I get there.
Yeah, I'm thinking I will be. I don't know. I'm trying not to be committing to too many things. I'm just like, we'll see. I like it now. We'll see about tomorrow. Suck it.
So Jason Ash is also in Baltimore, so you need to hit him up too.
Wait, who is?
He's Jason Ash. Have you met him? He went to Black artist.
Oh my God.
Queer. You went to Duke Div.
When? How did I not know him?
He was at Duke Div. Let me tell you when he graduated the first time, because he went twice.
Listen, Jason, I'm truly embarrassed that I don't know who even this is.
Yeah. I felt like y'all should have been around the same time, because I know he got his STM the year I graduated, 2016, but he was at Duke, I think, 2014 for MDiv. So maybe that's why you hadn't seen him. Like he knows all the people, you know. He knows Adam and Alamayu and.
Whoa. Okay. Well, you know, I will say, and I did not. This is my fault. I think me being the Catholic convert like scared a lot of people off. I think before they even knew me, they were just like, no, thank you. So, especially the like Black Baptists thought I was like a racist pope, you know, like papist. So I think that could be it.
But I mean, if I come back to Baltimore, because I was there during on the 19th through the 21st in DC, but I was on a big case. That's the only reason why I didn't call you.
Okay, I accept it. I'll accept it.
I just before you start yelling, because I felt the screeching coming. I was like,
it's fine.
So the only thing I only saw my aunt, and she only saw her god sister, and then and then also 420, and I'd say no more.
Okay, whatever that means, students who may or may not be watching this. All right, well, I can't wait to see you. I think we should figure that out soon. Hopefully you guys can come up here, or I'll come down there when Antonia comes. So we'll be in good shape.
And then maybe we should talk off live so we can like catch up for real.
Yes, for real. Should I maybe should I just call you? Should we do it at a different time? I've taken up so much of your time. Should we call like later this week?
No, I was about to say, I know I'm free right now because Bay's having dinner with her parents, so I don't know when she's getting back.
Okay, great. Then I'll just call you right now, and I'll head downstairs for a little situation that I have to take care of. Okay, I'll talk to you in a second. Bye.